Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Delray Beach Chamber of Commerce's weekly webinar. Today, our webinar is being presented by SCORE, and we have Richard Calcote here today to talk about Introduction to Business Ownership and how SCORE can help your business. Richard has over 40 years of experience as the senior financial officer for a number of national and multinational corporations. Most recently, he served as the CFO for Hospice of Palm Beach County, one of the largest nonprofit hospice organizations in the country. He spent a large part of his early career working overseas and eventually leveraged the knowledge gained into a successful interim CFO and executive consulting practice for nonprofit, government, and for-profit organizations. He recently retired as a CPA and continues to do a number of online workshops for SCORE and Kaiser University each year. Richard has a degree in economics from Tulane University and also holds an MBA in finance and a master's degree in accounting. He is fully fluent in Spanish and has been a member of SCORE since 2016. So I would like to welcome Richard onto the screen today, and he is going to go ahead and give you guys a worthwhile presentation. Richard, go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm glad you're all here. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes or so talking about what it takes to start a business. Now, I know that quite a few of you have already started your own businesses. Maybe you've been in business for a long time, but hopefully some of the information that we'll give you today will be helpful as you start to grow your business, which is the next important phase of any organization. So once you take root, you want to start growing a little bit. So I'm going to start off with a slide presentation that we use at SCORE, and I'll bring this up in just a second. I'll let you know when I'm ready to go. Okay. All right. Everybody should be able to see the slide presentation. So if you can't see a slide presentation, let us know right now. We'll try to get that fixed for you.
The slide is translating perfectly.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and get started then and talk about what it takes to be a business owner. First, I'd like to introduce SCORE, the organization that I've been a member of for several years. SCORE is a national organization and has been in existence since the mid-1960s. We're part of the Small Business Administration, and we've grown to about 300 chapters over the country. It's entirely made up of volunteers, mostly retired, and some active professionals. People still have some businesses going on. And what we do is a lot of one-on-one mentoring. That's basically our main volunteer opportunity, which means that we help a small business owner, whether you're getting started or if you're already in existence, that needs some help with all kinds of different things. And the nice thing about SCORE, particularly in a chapter like ours where we have about 60 members, you have the opportunity to speak to people that have different types of backgrounds, of people perhaps who have a financial background like myself. But if you need somebody who has more in-depth experience in marketing or sales, we have a lot of people who have those types of backgrounds, legal backgrounds, and so on. So you don't only get one mentor, but you get the whole group. And the nice thing about it is it's entirely free. We're funded by Congress. It's all volunteer. And you can get as much or as little help as you like. So if you want to have somebody kind of stick around for a year and talk to you once a week or meet with you once a month, whatever, that's what we're here for. So we do the group mentoring. We do a lot of educational workshops, just like the one we're doing today. And in the past, obviously before COVID, we were doing these live, and you would come to one of several different places to experience the workshop. Right now, we're doing a lot of them by Zoom, which seems to work pretty well anyway. And then in addition to the educational workshops, if you were to go to our website, we have a tremendous amount of online materials. So you can download templates, Excel spreadsheets, past presentations, just about any topic you can think about that relates to a small business. And so I would encourage you to take advantage of that. And I'll have these websites and some other information there at the very end of the presentation, so you'll have time to jot these down. So in addition to that, let's see if I can get my slides here to work. There we go. All right. Okay, so we already spoke about my background. I've been with SCORE for about 5 years and really have a good time working with a lot of different people doing this. So here are the things we're going to talk about today. And like I said, a lot of this is geared to people who are just starting their business, but it also applies to people who have existing businesses and maybe want to re-examine some of the things that got them into what they're doing right now. So at some point we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers, but feel free if there's anything that we're talking about in the moment to go ahead and interrupt and let me know, and we'll try to clarify it as we go along. So we're going to talk about basically what it takes to start a business and the emotional part of it, the family support. We're going to talk about funding, what it is that you're looking for in starting your own business, the reason why you might have started a business, and then some of the things to look out for, some of the pitfalls and some of the things that you want to try to avoid, and just basically the amount of stamina it takes to get a business going. So talk about the whys first, all right? So when we talk to people at SCORE, and these are things that we've sort of picked up from people in the past, we ask people, why do you want to start your own business? And we get a lot of interesting answers. So I'm going to go through this little list here of things. Everybody says they want to get rich starting their own business, and it's possible. As many of you know, a lot of people do make a very successful business into something even bigger, and they do quite well. A lot of people use it to support themselves, but maybe it's not quite the same as what they might have expected. A lot of people are bored with their jobs, and so they would like to know what will happen, if they leave their job, and whether or not they're going to be able to find the type of freedom and thought process that they thought they would get with this type of business. And somebody asked if the slides will be available, by the way, after the webinar, and absolutely, I'll make sure that you do have opportunity to see some of the slides and take them with you. Um, I get to do what I love. That's very important. If you're starting a business, you want to make sure that you're getting into something that you really like. Don't start a business just because you think you have to. Do something that you really enjoy, because you're going to have to put a lot of effort into this business. So our advice right away is, before you start anything, make sure you're getting into something that you understand and something that you really enjoy doing, and you'll have a lot more success that way. Some people say I can be my own boss. We'll talk about that a little later on. That's true in some cases. In other cases, you might have other people dictating how your business is going to run. You might have a great idea for a business. A lot of people do, and you want to make sure that your idea isn't the same that somebody down the street might have. So you want to think about what it's going to take there. Everybody tells me I should, and that's nice. You have a lot of people have confidence in you, and they say, hey, you ought to get out and start this and set up your own business. But also be careful. People want to be nice, and unless they're investing their hard-earned money and time, it's no sweat off their back to say nice things to you. So beware of that, and just make sure that you want to start the business, and not just because you're trying to satisfy everybody else. This one, for those of you who have your own businesses, I will get a lot more free time. Kind of doubt that, particularly the first few years when you start your business. Hopefully down the line, maybe you can hire in a partner or bring in some people to help you out, or maybe you'll sell the business one of these days, and then your time will free up. So there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts that go with that, depending on what you're getting into. There's also this sort of feeling that I'm going to show people that I can do it. Maybe you've had some bad experiences at a job you've been working at, and you finally think to yourself, I can get out and do this myself. And so just be careful with that, though. I mean, you don't want to make this a spiteful venture. You want to do something that you really love, and something that you know you can be successful at. So you got to think about the factors that are important to you and how these things are going to impact your life going forward. So in the very beginning, people talk about, okay, I'm going to transition from my job, and I've got these things I'm already doing. They're kind of a hobby, but I want to turn it into a business. So here are the basics. You have a job, and you have a job because you might be supporting yourself and others, namely your family. You get a regular paycheck. You have experience in the products or services that the company provides. You've got some definite responsibilities, so they're very well defined. Perhaps you're the VP of marketing, so everybody knows that you have to develop all the marketing materials and talk to suppliers and the distributors and so on and understand how the marketing program is going to go. And you may love your job or you may not love your job. Some people take jobs and they say, oh, I'll do it for the money, but I'd rather be doing something else. So that might lead you into going into your own business. So there you've got a little bit of a push. And on the other side of things, in your spare time, you might have a hobby out there making something. So you do again have the product knowledge of something that you're working with, but you do this in your spare time. It doesn't make any money. It's not work because you do it when you feel like doing it, and you do it because you like doing it. You love it. So that's the difference between a job and a hobby. A job is the real thing. A hobby is fun, and a lot of people sometimes get those things mixed up and say, "Hey, I went to a craft show this week and I sold some bracelets or whatever I've done. I think I can make a lot of money at it." Well, think very hard about where that market's going and what it is that you really can do with the products and the types of services that you're putting out there. I talked a few moments ago about who the boss is, all right? And definitely when you take a look at your business, you are the boss. So if you own your own business, you are the CEO. It's your business. But when you first start out, you might also be the person in charge of all the accounting and human resources and the technology and customer service. So it can be a little overwhelming depending on the type of business you have. So before you get into a business, you want to make sure that you take a look at all the different hats that you're going to wear starting from day one and figure out what is your strategy going to be going forward. When will you start hiring and help to do things? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to do it all, particularly if you want to grow your business. And a lot of you who have a business right now and are probably thinking, what's the next step? You might be going through this thought process already. Can I afford to hire somebody to do this particular job for me? It frees me up to do some other things, like perhaps go out and market my business or find new customers and expand and find better facilities and technology. So you have to be very cognizant of the different types of jobs. And like I said, initially, yes, you'll be doing, whatever jobs are needed for your business. Might not be as extensive as this, but it's always good to write these things down and sort of keep a running list of what has to get done. Some of the questions that we get at SCORE also with regards to new businesses, we sort of put this in the category of reality or myth. And one of the first things I get asked about, particularly since I deal with most of the accounting and tax questions that come through the organization here locally, if I start a small business, I'll be able to write off all of my expenses. The answer to that is it's pretty much true. If you have any expenses that are related to the business, absolutely, including any expenses that you might incur before you start your business. So, for example, you might spend 3 months talking to an attorney, maybe an accountant, maybe setting up a lease, buying supplies, equipment, and so on, but you still haven't opened your doors. All those expenses are absolutely legitimate business expenses and they are tax deductible. So again, from day one, very, very important to keep track of all your expenses. Make sure you keep good records. If you have a business, you should have a business checking account, get a business credit card, and use that only for your business expenses. Don't mix it with your personal stuff. That way you'll have a clean record as to what you can write off and what you can't. Another question we get is, okay, fine, I don't really have to register my business if it's small. And the answer to that is no, technically, you really do have to register your business. We have a workshop at SCORE that we do. It's called Legal and Tax Implications of Setting Up a Business in Florida. And I would encourage you to take a look at our website. It's about an hour and a half long, but it goes through all the basic things that you need to know about registering your business, not only with the state of Florida, but also what kind of business you're going to set up. Is it a corporation? Is it a partnership? Is it an LLC? What about the IRS? Do you have to register with the IRS? Yes, you do. How about locally? Yes, they also want to collect taxes locally too, and might know those basically as a business receipt or an occupational license. And if you're in a profession, since like I was as a CPA, you also have to register with the state governing boards. So Again, if you're a chiropractor or a lawyer or a CPA and you're one of the professions, you do have to register your business separately that way too. And there are some requirements you have to follow. Some people say, well, I'm not really doing a whole lot right now. I go to these little weekend shows, the farmers market and so on. I sell this, that, and the other. So it's not really a real business. It's kind of my hobby. So it doesn't really count. Well, it depends on what you want it to be. Certainly, it's not a real business if it's just a hobby and you're casually selling stuff from time to time. That's okay. But if you are writing off expenses against that business and telling the IRS that, oh, I've lost all this money, then you are basically declaring that business as a business with the IRS. And they might get after you for writing off expenses if you don't have a lot of revenue. So, for example, again, if you're making bracelets or something, you're spending a ton of money on beads and you're writing all that off, but you're really not selling anything or you're giving the stuff away as gifts, that write-off is going to get thrown back at you. And so you got to be very careful with that. So again, if you go into some of the planning websites that we have on our website, and also to some of the workshops we have about this, you'll be able to define what your business is in terms of is it real and all the things that I have to do to make sure I'm in compliance. This is probably one of the top questions we get all the time. There's all kinds of government grants to help start a small business. And the answer to that is we wish it was true, but it's not. As we know, the government is not necessarily in business of handing out money blind. If you do get money from the government, and if those of you have done this in the past, there's a lot of paperwork involved, but mainly it's associated with perhaps a loan guarantee through the SBA. You may get some local grants from local governments or maybe some tax breaks and so on. And there are some private organizations that might give grants to your type of business, particularly if you are running a business that might impact an underserved community or something, or you want to relocate to an area where they really want to bring in new factories or whatever, and you might get some tax breaks there. But overall, there really are no direct government grant programs for small businesses. So the risk is really on your shoulders. And of course, so one of our favorites here, starting a small business will let me live the lifestyle of my dreams. That's why you go into business, but you really have to define that lifestyle too. And this is where it's very important before you get into something that you're open with your family about what you're trying to do, very open with your investors about the amount of money it's going to take to get this business started, the risks involved, and how much you're going to be able to handle on this business once you get into it. So bottom line is that it can be very rewarding, but you have to work at it. And the first 2 or 3 years might be quite a bit more work than you anticipated. So give yourself that reality check. If you're really ready to go through that process, that's fine. But one of the things you want to think about is how is it going to impact your lifestyle with your family right now. We had a question about women-owned business funding. I'm not familiar with any programs right now from the government that directly fund women-owned businesses, but there is priority given to women and minority-owned businesses for certain programs, particularly if the government procurement programs. So that's something I would look into if you're starting a minority or business owned by women. So the first thing that we like to have everybody do once they sort of get it in their mind that they're going to start a business is to write down a business plan, starting with your critical steps for starting this business. Okay, so that goes into some of the things we already talked about, is clearly defining your business idea and examining your motives. You can't really get into business without a clear idea of what you're going to do. We have had a lot of people come in and they say, well, I've got an idea that, maybe I can do a cleaning business or maybe something, a car wash, but I'm not really sure. Well, we're not able to really tell these folks what it is they're good at because we don't know them. And we're not in the business of trying to tell people this is the type of business you have to start. This has to come from you. So for those of you who have started your own businesses, you've gone through this process already. You know what it takes and you know where the pros and the cons are, and you've been willing to commit the amount of hours needed to get started up. One of the things we try to drill into everybody's head is you really have to have a lot of discipline, and you have to plow through some of the tough parts too. There's going to be issues, frustrations with starting a business. And I think one of the things that SCORE can help is the continuous mentorship to anybody. So whether you go with SCORE or other local organizations that might be able to help you, you need some outside perspective too. So make sure that you either have somebody from SCORE or maybe somebody. I don't know if the chamber is offering any mentoring or coaching on some of these things, and also to other people that might have their own businesses in the same area and are willing to share some of what they've gone through. It's very important to understand the market you're getting into, and we'll talk a little bit later on about some of the strategies to do some competitive analysis. So just like the large companies, you need to know who's out there that you're going to compete against. And you want to make sure that you're not getting into something that's already been tried or maybe it's oversaturated in the market. You want to be able to get into something that you can sell, some service that you can provide and be competitive because you've got that edge on everybody else. And perhaps it's something unique that nobody else can offer. So again, we always tell people to look for help, talk to other businesses, professionals, people you can trust. Please come to SCORE. I mean, we don't charge you anything, so and we can provide you with input from several different people on the type of business you're thinking of starting. But the other thing we also talk about is the very last item here, and that's developing what I call a living business plan. And that is the written document that goes into telling you um, before you even present it to anybody else what this is all about. There's nothing like putting things down in writing and mapping it out and spending maybe a few weeks really just fine tuning this thing so that you have satisfied every question in your mind, that you've covered all the bases, that you've done the research and so on. And then more importantly, once you have a business plan done, it's going to be the first thing that the banks are going to ask for or the investors are going to ask for when you look for funding from them. So a business, can have various formats. I mean, these are all the things that you would find in a business plan. Maybe not everything would apply to what you're doing, but you would always have an executive summary at the very beginning. And the executive summary is actually the thing you're going to do last. So you can do the entire business plan. And I got a couple of pages of bullet points here for you. But the executive summary is that two-page summary. It's kind of like what you've heard of before is the elevator speech, but this is in writing. And the reason for that is that when you go to the bank and you want to talk to the bank officer about your business, they don't have a whole lot of time to really spend digging through 50 pages of documents and charts and so on. What they want to see is a concise summary of what this is all about. What is it you're going to do? I'm going to start this type of a business in this area because it's underserved. The competition hasn't come up with a novel idea, but I have, and here's how it's going to work. My numbers show that the first year I can be profitable after 10 months, and here's the reason why. And then if you dig in a little bit deeper, you'll see all the details supporting this. So your executive summary really has to grab them by the throat right away and say, look, here's what I'm going to do. You're going to be interested to want to read the rest of this. Then you go into your business description and your market and competition. So that basically sets the stage, all right? So here's what I'm planning on doing, and here's the environment out there. And by the way, here are the products and services that we're going to offer through this business that makes us so unique. And how are we going to get this out there? We're going to have a marketing and a selling plan that says, once we've got ourselves up and running, this is how the world is going to find out about us. And this is how we're going to close those sales. And people come in, or if we go to them, we're going to get them interested, and we want to make sure that they understand what it is we're doing. And what's it going to take? Well, it's going to take people to do it. So I'm the management right now, but soon we're going to hire some people in, and these are the jobs they're going to fill, and here's the time frame for each one. You might want to put in a little bit of risk assessment. We live in a hurricane zone, so every once in a while things do get shut down for a few days or maybe a few weeks. So how are you going to survive, and what's going to happen if you can't get to your business because of flooding or whatever for an extended period of time? You have to be able to show some survivability. Then we get into my favorite part, which is the financial data. And like I tell everybody, finance and numbers are the language of business. So if you're presenting a business plan to somebody in France or somebody in Germany or somebody in the US, they may not speak the language, but you show them the numbers, everybody understands that. And the basic parts of a financial plan are going to be a cash flow analysis, which shows basically how much cash is coming into the business and how much is going out, and how you're going to keep that in check so you always have money in the bank. You'll have balance sheets for each period for the first year, probably on a monthly basis, and then for the subsequent years, maybe on a quarterly or annual basis. And a balance sheet, for those of you who understand financial statements, it's kind of like your bank statement and your loan statement. It shows you what you have at any given point in time. So your balance sheet is going to say you have so much money in the bank at the end of March. And by the way, you owe X number of dollars to your creditors at the end of March, and so on. Your income statement's a little different. That's the one we all like to look at. It shows during a particular period how much revenue is coming in and how many expenses are going out. And you subtract the expenses from the income, and hopefully you get a positive number. And if you don't, you've got a loss. But you might have a loss in any business during the first few months. And what you want to do is get down to this break even point. So the bank is talking to you and you say, okay, fine. So the first few months you're ramping up, you got a lot of expenses. That's normal. We want to see when you're going to be at break even. And your chart might say, okay, fine, we're going to be there after 6 months or 7 months. And you're going to have to prove it to them. Show them why your marketing plan is working, why your product is selling, and how much money you're going to need to get you to that point. And out of that, you're going to need to discuss how much money needs to be invested, either through loans or investors. And your appendices would be attached at the very end. And these could be anything you want. There'd be photographs of your products, descriptions of the services in some detail, maybe testimonials from people who know you, and maybe some other charts that can show some things out there. So a lot of things go into a business plan. And the reason I call it a living business plan is that you need to be prepared to change this as time goes on. After you start your business, you might want to change it because your experience of starting up says, you know what, we're going to shift gears and do something a bit different. So don't be afraid to update your business plan from time to time. I wouldn't do it more than maybe twice a year. So maybe after the first 6 months, okay, here's what our experience has shown us. So we're going to make some mid-course adjustments. Now here's what we're going to do for the second 6 months. And then for the subsequent years, it's going to be a little bit broader. It won't be a month by month. It'll be a full annual, just 1 year shot saying, okay, here's where we're going to go next year and for year number 3. So we also do a workshop on writing business plans. So we have one called Writing a Business Plan for Success, but there's two or three others too that go with that, which talk about developing a financial plan for your business plan. Others about specifically pulling together the funding. And on the SCORE website, tremendous amount of information, a lot of templates and sample business plans. So you can kind of dig around in there and see what other people are doing too. But it's very, very important when you're first starting, get everything down in writing. That way you're not going to forget anything. It organizes your thoughts, and people are going to ask for it anyway. So it's a good practice to get into. So we talk to people if you're ready. Things to consider, first of all, is your product or service something that people are going to pay for time and time again? And don't forget, a lot of products that small businesses provide are things that people pay for with discretionary income. So unless you are running the water plant and everybody needs water, likely is that something you're providing is going to be out of their discretionary income. Even something simple like cleaning swimming pools. A lot of people clean their own pool, but it's a luxury to have somebody come in once a week and do it for them. So you got to understand that some people in good times will be happy to pay for your product or service, but you need to be prepared to also maybe lose some people. Things get a little bit tight. And it's hard to gauge sometimes. Over the past year, obviously things have kind of gotten flipped around. So put your mind into the long haul, over a 5-year period. How will this service play out? What's the competition doing? And can I get those dollars from these folks over and over again to keep asking for my services? Several ways to get into a business. Obviously, you can start from scratch, which is what most people seem to think of when you come to SCORE. I have a great idea for a business. Okay, where's the money going to come from? Well, I'm probably going to have to mortgage the house, maybe sell some things. I got some savings. And so we tell them right away, okay, start thinking about doing some things a little bit differently because it might take a little more than you think. Some of the options, though, are you can buy an existing business, which is basically somebody who has decided to retire or wants to sell and go somewhere else. A lot of business brokers out there will sell you an existing business, but be careful because they're going to put their best foot forward, and sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. You could buy a franchise, depending on the franchise you're buying, it can be very successful. Some of the more successful ones obviously are very, very expensive these days. But when you buy a franchise, if you can afford to do it, they may help you with the financing, which is a big plus. You get brand identification right away. You get a location, you get a territory, you get training, you get all kinds of materials to put into your business for marketing. You get tied into national marketing programs. So a lot of opportunities, but you pay a price for it. And when you have a franchise, don't forget you're also paying royalties back to the parent company, to the franchisor. So you need to weigh that. But it's not a bad way to get started. I know a lot of people have franchises for simple things, even lawn maintenance, franchises for paint services, and so on. And they've been very successful with it. So it's not always a McDonald's or a Burger King, but it could be service oriented too. The last one is really a business opportunity. And I would kind of categorize this as something like you'd see on Shark Tank, where people are buying into a business that somebody has, but they need an investor. So you become basically the shark, you invest money in it, but you also participate in managing and running the business. Now, what's tricky here is to negotiate the amount of ownership and influence you have. You want to put money in somebody's business, and then you absolutely have no control over what they're doing with your hard-earned money. So this would probably work well if you have a friend that needs a partner, or maybe a family member is looking to expand and they want to bring you in, and somebody you know very well. But these are different ways you can get into a business as opposed to just starting from scratch. Money, okay, most important thing. Things to think about: how much money you're going to need to start up a business. I'm going to say it's probably more than you thought. And for those of you who have your own businesses, you've probably experienced this too. It does take some degree of cash to get a business going. The startup requires things like leases that you have to sign, deposits. You might need to have some legal input, and somebody needs to go over documents, and attorneys are not cheap. You might need an accountant, so you hire a CPA to set up your books, maybe start handling your bookkeeping for you, do your taxes for you, and so on. You need some training, perhaps for new employees. So you got to train people to do things. You might have to train yourself. You're looking at something that you're not quite familiar with, at least from a business perspective. So you want to get some training too. And in the process, you're buying stuff. You're buying computers. You're building out office space. You might need the delivery trucks, refrigeration equipment. And before you actually open the doors to your business, you might be paying for rent, and you're going to have leases you have to pay for, utilities, and so on. Once you open your doors, it might be another few months until you reach break even. So during this period, there's money going out the door faster than it's coming in. And you're scrambling and scratching your head. I got to market this business. I got to pay the bills. And on top of that, you have your own personal living expenses. So if you have a family to support and a mortgage to pay, don't forget about that. So unless you have some other income coming in, which detracts from your new business, you really need to have a little war chest built up out there. Now, some of this could come in the form of your own savings, but more than likely, you're going to negotiate something with a bank, and that could come in the form of a business loan. But also think about things like leases and perhaps mortgages on a piece of property that maybe you're building out. So a lot of different things. You have to get really very creative. But the important thing is to spend some time on your business plan and get those numbers down. Get somebody from SCORE, or maybe hire an accountant to help you put a business plan together that makes sense. That will show you exactly where your cash issues are going to be as you go further down. So when we talk about cash, again, probably more important even than thinking about profits is how much cash do you have, like I mentioned, but how much is going to start coming in on a daily basis? And it's not just the revenue that you record, because you could sell something to somebody and give them 30-day terms. Well, that's nice. You have revenue, but you don't have the cash, and the cash is what you're after. Cash might not come in until they decide to pay their bills. So be very stingy with credit. On the flip side, see if you can get your suppliers to give you credit, or if anything, get a business credit card. So when you buy stuff, the cash doesn't go out the door quite as quickly as it would if you're just paying cash for things. We suggest keep a daily business diary, and that literally means recording how much cash in hand is coming in every day and how much cash is going out every day. So it could be through your bank account, or it could be through a cash register, but keep track of that. And you'd be surprised what you're going to find in there, how much cash is really moving along. It'll give you sort of a little quick way to make a quick cash flow analysis. It's very basic, but it's a good way to get started, particularly if you have a small business. Um, and as I mentioned before, your cash, which comes from your revenue, may not appear on your doorstep for several days or even several months, as this case, after the sale. So you don't want to give a lot of credit to people in the beginning. So be careful if family and friends say, hey, I want to buy this from you, but I'll pay you at the end of the month. We're family. Don't worry, I'm good for it. Be careful with that. Same thing with cash going out. Hopefully you can set up some sort of terms with your vendors and say, look, we need all these supplies, but what are your terms? Can I pay you at the end of the month? Can I pay you by credit card? So just make sure that you protect your cash, hang on to it for as long as you can, and be very, very stingy about the cash going out the door. So when we talk about cash and the need for getting cash, where is it going to come from? All right. We have two different categories: debt and investment. Debt funds are things that you are going to either borrow from yourself or borrow from somebody else. So if you borrow from yourself, it might be some savings you have, could be bonds and stocks, whatever you have out there. You might have cash value life insurance, you borrow against that. You take a home equity line of credit and borrow some money there, although I really hate to see people get their homes tied up in a business if they can avoid it. It is some risk. You can borrow from family or friends. We know how touchy that can be, though, so be very careful with that. Make sure they understand the terms. Always have this written down in a binding document. Have a nice, you can use a standard loan agreement or have an attorney draft it up, but just don't leave it to the wind. Make sure you understand what the repayment terms are. And if you're borrowing from family or friends, please make sure you pay them back right away. You don't want to lose that support group that you have out there. Then we get into the banks, credit unions, and finance companies. Again, this is where your business plan comes in. And the banks might give you a small business loan of some sort. They might give you a loan against your inventory. You could get an equipment lease from a bank. So maybe if you're going to lease equipment, set up a leasing program for everything that you can, so you pay it down over a long period of time. Or you can get a straight equipment loan, so you can get trucks, and if you want to buy them, you can get a vehicle loan on that. Credit cards are good for your month-to-month stuff, but I would strongly urge you to pay off your credit cards in full. What you'd like to do with your credit cards is use that to build up your credit score. So as a business, same as an individual, you're going to be judged on how well you manage your credit. So if you have a bank credit card, get those balances paid off every single month. Don't carry a balance on those. And the bank would rather get your money back than to charge you those crazy interest rates. But then you can start demonstrating to other vendors out there and say, look, I pay everything back on time, and the bank can vouch for it. Very important. Some businesses, you can get a prepayment from your customer. So if you're in any type of construction or if in some sort of a service business, sometimes you can ask your customers for a deposit, and they'll pay it. So construction, you might get 1/3 up front and 1/3 in the middle and 1/3 at the end or something like that. And then credit from your suppliers, which you talked about before. So if your suppliers will sell you on credit, you don't pay for your stuff until you absolutely have to. And again, try to stick to those terms. So we talked about loans. I mean, these are some of the things lenders will ask you, and this is nothing new, I think, to most of you. They're going to want to know about your business, all right? And guess what? I marked it down there in red. You have a business plan made up, if you follow what we've been talking about, that has everything they need to know. So the most important thing about a business plan when you do present to the bank is make sure that you know it backwards and forwards, because they're going to ask you, okay, now on page 25, you said that you're going to market this particular area because of this, that, and the other. You need to be prepared to answer that on the spot. So make sure that you are well versed with your business plan. Even if somebody else does it and you don't quite understand the finances, sit down with somebody who can explain it over and over to you until you got it backwards and forwards. This has to be your plan. So you want to come into the bank with a lot of confidence and a good repayment plan that says, okay, after 12 months, we can start repaying this loan. And here's the reason why, because my financial projections support it. And you can say I've been very conservative with my expectations here. So I know I can do this. I actually expect to do better. And by the way, I have a contingency in case we have to shut down because of a hurricane for 2 weeks in the summertime. So you've got all these things mapped out. Give the bank the confidence and the data it can look at to prove to them and to yourselves that you can qualify for that loan. Extremely important. The other thing is funding from equity sources. And again, this is where people become part owners of your business. So when you get into your corporate structure, when you first start your business, a lot of people say, well, I just want to be a sole proprietor. And if you go to our workshop, we're going to advise you not to do that, simply because there's too much personal liability involved. You want to have a separate legal entity for your business. It doesn't cost you very much, about 150 bucks in the state of Florida. In a couple of days, you can set up a sub-S corporation or an LLC, which is a limited liability company. Sub-S corporation just means it's a corporation that follows subchapter S of the Internal Revenue Code, that's the IRS, and you get some tax breaks for doing it that way. There are some restrictions, but again, your accountant, or if you come to our workshop, we'll explain to you what that's all about. Very easy to do. It's not a big deal, but I strongly urge you to do either one of those two structures. But with that, then you can have family members, could be shareholders in your corporation, or they could be partners in your LLC. And that means investors, or maybe they come in to be managers to help you with the work, and you pay them a little something for their time. You get venture capitalists and angel venture capital and so on. These are people that like to invest in interesting businesses, and they might provide you with some funding. Terms vary all over the place, but it's always good to check with the local venture capital associations. They have meetings. I think there's a Gold Coast venture capital group that I used to go to, and they would have interesting people from different businesses to get up and make their pitch and talk about what they're planning on doing. And they do generate interest from investors that way too. Limited partnerships, it's really more an investment funding thing, but if you're doing a special project such as building a hotel or an apartment building or something like that, that might be a one-off project, and you can set up a limited partnership where you're the general partner and your limited partners provide funding in return.
Hi, Richard. Your sound cut out a little bit. Richard? Richard?
Different crowdfunding.
Perfect. Richard, just to let you know, your audio cut out a little bit there. You might want to back up about 30 seconds.
Okay. All right. No problem. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
can. You hear me?
Yep. Correct.
Okay, good. All right. So I'm just talking about the ownership here and equity funds. So again, family and friends, you might set up a sub-S corporation or LLC to invite other people to join you in the company. That's perfectly fine. That way you get investors who may participate in the running of the business, or maybe just want to be in there for the ride because they have a lot of confidence in you. Venture capital investors, these are people who will look at small businesses and will decide, gee, this looks interesting. Maybe I'll provide some funding for them. So again, we suggest going to some of the associations, local associations, and make a pitch. And they have these monthly meetings, and all kinds of people come in there looking to either make investments or to pitch an idea. And you list a lot of very interesting entrepreneurs by doing that. Again, I mentioned limited partnerships. These are for special projects. So this is a way to get funding for a hotel or maybe an apartment building. And your limited partners basically are just limited to being investors, and you're the general partner. But they get the benefit of certain tax write-offs and the benefit of accelerated repayments once the business is sold or is turned profitable. And so there's a very lucrative market for that too. Again, you need some expertise from an attorney and a CPA to do that. And then there's crowdfunding, where people go online and they say, I'm doing this, that, or the other. And people will put money into it. And in some cases, there's some benefit for doing that. Or maybe they say, you got a great project going here, and it's really got a good public purpose. I'm just going to put money into this for you to get started. So there are some things you can do there. So questions you want to ask yourself, okay, as you go through this. Again, this is a lot of soul searching, all right? You want to make sure that you have really analyzed this thing all the way through. You've spoken to your family, uh, understand your own business experience based on what you've done. The business plan, I can't emphasize that enough, is very, very important. And are you ready to take on the responsibility and put in the long hours? It takes a long time to get a business up and running and get it off the ground. The average is probably somewhere between 3 and 5 years before you get to a point where you're really satisfied that the business is now clicking along, and you've sort of made it at that point. You're ready to start expanding. So for those of you who already have your own businesses, maybe some of you have gotten to that point already, and you're moving up, which is great. Some of you are thinking, what's the next step? So you can go back through some of those initial soul searching and some of the things we talked about here to figure out where you are. A lot of the people we have coming in the score are exactly that. They're existing businesses, and they've kind of hit the ceiling there and say, okay, now what else can I do to get this thing off the ground? It's doing okay, but it's not really what I wanted. And so we can help you with that, and go through the process with you and help you get organized. So it's all about support, and obviously to a great degree the resources, including the funding out there to get a business going. You have to be very, very careful with that. And the research that you have to put into this to make sure that this is really the right path for you. Again, going into business, it's a serious thing. It does take a lot of time. It's a stressful situation for a lot of people. So you want to ask yourself, is it really worth it? What am I going to do with this business, after 20 years or 30 years? And that's where we also talk about the end game. And the end game is, what's it going to be 5 years from now? Is that where it is? Or am I going to take this up to the next level until the day I retire? When I retire, what am I going to do with this business? Just let it die, pass it on to my family, my kids, sell it to somebody else? So you always want to think a few steps ahead of the game where you are right now. It's fine to think I can get in and do a bunch of little things here, but really, let's make this into a real legitimate business. Let's make this into an enterprise that really focuses on the types of things that I've been wanting to do and provides me with the satisfaction that I need. So again, it's an honesty check. We spend a lot of time really kind of probing people's minds and making sure they understand before they quit their job that they can really do this. And we don't want to have anybody fail on us. We want to make sure everybody's done all the right things. So with that said, we have in our local chapter here over 60 volunteers, and all you have to do is go online and say, there's a section there where you request a volunteer to help you out. And like I said, the interesting thing is that you sort of put down what you think you're starting a business with and where you want to go with it, just some very basic stuff. You'll get assigned a mentor that we think matches you, but along the way, if you need somebody with additional experience and maybe more technical experience in certain areas, we have other people that will join your lead mentor and will work with you on those issues, or at least nudge you in the right direction. So it's a great program, And if you go to palmbeachcounty.score.org, that's where you're going to find us and all the information about how to reach us there. And you can also see the workshops that are coming up and some of the other things that we have in our library. So there's hundreds of videos and templates and informational items in there that will help you with just about any kind of business. I also mentioned that there's some things you can do to get your business set up. Certain irs.gov, that's the IRS's website, is actually very user friendly. They've done a great job with that, so you can find just about anything you need there. That's where you would go to set up your business after you get your corporation from the corporation number from the state of Florida, or your LLC. In Florida, it's very easy. It's sunbiz.org. I think a lot of you are probably familiar with that already. That puts you into the Secretary of State. And also you can get to the Florida Department of Revenue there. So you can set up your company, register a name, do a fictitious name. If you're selling stuff to the public, then you can register for sales tax and get all that set up there. And then I mentioned also your local occupational license, which they now call your business tax receipt. Typically, no matter where you live, you're going to have to register with the county and also with the area that's incorporated within that county, such as a town or a city. So for example, I live in Jupiter. So I had my business registered with Palm Beach County and then town of Jupiter. And every year they send me a friendly reminder, you owe us your $50, so we can say that you're properly registered with that. So it's not a real big thing. So with that, I am open for some questions right now. And I went through a couple here that were on the Q&A. Somebody asked, what is a sub S corporation? So a subchapter S corporation is an IRS creation. If you set up a corporation in Florida, first of all, a corporation is a corporation. So it's just one type of corporation. So you set that up in Florida, then you go to the IRS and you say, I want this corporation to be treated as a subchapter S corporation. And that comes from subchapter S of the IRS code. And what that says is that now this corporation will not pay taxes directly. All the profits and losses from the corporation will go into the owner's personal taxes. So if you own a company that makes $100,000 and it's a sub S corporation, the sub S will report no taxes. That $100,000 gets transferred to your personal tax return and you pay for it there. And the reason for that is that usually the personal tax returns for most small business owners, the tax rate was a lot less than what the corporations had to pay. And so it was a pretty good tax incentive. Nowadays, that's kind of flipped around a little bit. So again, you need a good tax planner to help you out with that. But it's a good way to set up a corporation, and you're allowed to have 100 shareholders. So the 100 shareholders can be members of your family, friends, and so on. And there's very little paperwork involved in bringing them in. All right. Any other questions?
Wonderful. So Richard, did you get the one that said, what about women-owned business funding?
Yeah, I saw that one earlier. And that one is, the question there, I think, had to do with any grants. And I'm not familiar with any grants for women-owned businesses. But there is some preferential treatment in government contracts. So, they want to have a certain number of either minority or women-owned businesses. And so there's a separate application. So they try to keep that open to everybody.
Great. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to type them down in the chat below. I do have a couple for you, Richard, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So my first one is going to be, how long does it take for my business to become established, or approximately?
That's going to probably take a good 3 to 6 months.
3 to
You've
6
got to
months.
go through the planning process. And by that time, you're going to go through your business plan, you're going to talk to your investors, you talk to the bank. And then the day that you open your door for the business, you can plan probably another 3 to 6 months before you actually hit the break-even point if things go well. It might take a little longer than that. So, and then for the business to mature, it can take up to about 5 years for the business to become, I would say fully matured. So, where you can sit back and say, okay, we've gotten to where we want to be.
Yes, I've heard that before, that it takes about 5 years before a business is profitable. Okay, wonderful. And then, so my next question is, what tax and legal issues do I need to address when setting up a new business?
Okay, so it's kind of what we talked about earlier is that you will need to decide the corporate form. So there's basically three things that we talk about in one of our workshops on legal and tax. One is a sole proprietorship. You could do that if you have a very, very small business, and that's kind of like the me, myself, and I. But we really recommend you set up a separate legal entity, and that's going to be a subchapter S corporation or an LLC. So that's the first step. And then the next step is going to be deciding who's going to be an owner in that business, how many partners you're going to have, if it's an LLC. And you're going to have to file with the IRS. You're going to have to file with with your local entity. But more importantly, all this will give you credibility as a business. So we say it's very, very important to have a legal entity, particularly when you go to the bank, when you deal with the creditors. They don't want to see, Richard's home office. They want to see Richard's corporation, my
Right.
business, with a separate tax ID number.
Great.
So, number of steps to go through there, which we would talk about more extensively.
Okay. And then we just had another question pop up. How long should the total business plan be?
Um, I would say probably no more than 20 pages, and that's maximum, probably more in the range of 12 to 20 pages. And what you want to do is be very focused on what your business is all about. And then you can supplement it in the appendices with all kinds of charts and stuff. But the plan part itself, maybe 12 to 20 pages tops, where you're describing the business. I've seen some of these things that go on forever and ever. Nobody wants to read them. So you need to learn to be concise. So that's very, very important.
Great. And then I guess my last question is going to be, along with SCORE, what other resources are available to me?
Okay. So a lot of things, obviously, I'm starting with the chamber, of course, you have local resources there. I would look at local trade groups. There might be something going on there. The local universities, sometimes, I would say probably Palm Beach State, they have business classes and so on. Sometimes you can get students to come in and help you with your business plan, for example. You'll find somebody that's really good at Excel and with numbers and so on, and you're not. So we've had interns and so on come in to help do these things, and they appreciate getting the experience. Um, the rest of it really is looking at the rest of the community out there and seeing who else is doing things, and perhaps talking to people who are already in business. And then the Small Business Administration, which we're a part of, if you're really getting in deep into like loan guarantees and so on, will also help steer you in the right direction.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that.
Okay.
And thank you for joining us today. I don't see any
Right.
more questions down below. To
Okay.
our
Great.
viewers, this webinar has been recorded, so it is posted on Facebook, YouTube, and the Chamber's website underneath the webinars tab. That means that you can view this again at your leisure, or you can share it with anybody that you think might be interested in learning about the information. So we will also make sure that you got all of these slides today. We'll send them out to you via email for those who were participating on the call. Thank you again to Richard for joining us and to SCORE as well. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.